Welcome to Vinyl Essence, show number 127. I'm Jim Ish, and I have a special guest, a frequent contributor to the podcast, Ken Pobo. Ken, how are you doing?
I'm real good. How are you, Jim?
I'm great. It's great to see you again. It's been a long time since we had a chance to chat. We've been keeping in touch by email, but it's always good to see you. Um,
Even in a rectangular box.
that's where I live now.
Most people do. The new form of anthill.
Whoever thought the Hollywood squares would become real, right?
I'm waiting for Paul Lind.
So we're doing something a little different with Vinyl Essence now. I'm trying to pivot the podcast from a radio format where I just play songs to more of a talk show format where I talk about what I've been listening to and collecting and bring in guests like Ken to chat with me. And then what I'm going to try to do is share a YouTube playlist of many of the songs that come from albums that we're chatting about. So people at home can listen at their own leisure and if they want to. And we're also videotaping this. So we're going to try to post this on the Vinyl Essence YouTube channel, and I'll throw a link in the website to that as well, if it works. So without further ado, I really just, Ken, wanted to get caught up on the last, I'd say 2-3 months of listening and collecting that you've been doing. We both love to collect records and CDs, and I'm always curious as to see what you've been into lately. And for our first album, I'll turn it over to you. You said you'd like to talk about this Beatles um, compilation or various artist compilation of Beatles songs. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this one?
This one just came out really recently within the last couple of months. It's called Looking Through a Glass Onion. Anyone who knows the White Album knows the song. It's one of my favorite ones on the White Album called Glass Onion. So thus the title. And it's covers, but it focuses mostly on the Beatles' kind of psychedelic period, more from 66 to 72. However, that being said, you'll also have kind of psychedelicized versions of Hard Day's Night, which would precede that particular period in the Beatles' career. So the title is slightly deceptive that way, maybe in a positive way. One thing that I if I could do the uh, CD myself, I would cut back on the number of cover versions of I Am the Walrus. I love it's maybe my favorite Beatles song. I mean, I'm crazy about it, but why have four or five? Why
Wow.
not have one, maybe two? Because there's no cover of Long, 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 for example, one of my favorite Georges. Why not give the space over to more songs than to really? And they did that. There's like two or three Strawberry Fields. Again, a song I absolutely adore, but it's like, well, every space you duplicate, that some another song could have been, looked at here, but they make it as they make it. It is a three CD set, and so you really have to kind of get into a Beatles covers headspace to really kind of groove on it. But that being said, I found some really nifty covers on it that by groups I didn't know or had barely heard of, and it's not just big people doing Beatles songs that we might already know. So it's like they're really into kind of more lesser known kind of folks, and I like that because I feel like it expands out my listening a little bit, and also people maybe to look for in the future, not just because they did Beatles covers, but they might just be interesting with other songs that they did.
I'm seeing a lot of artists in the track list that I've never heard of before. They were pretty obscure. Then there's some famous names too. And it's a 3 CD set. How are the liner notes in this set? Are they good? Or
I'll hold up the liner notes and you can see that. Well, if I would hold it the right way, you can see it's a thick book.
that's nice. Got pictures.
Oh yeah, pictures of the, like, if it was a single or something,
Yeah.
it'll show that, and there's always information about the group. And remember, we're dealing with lesser known people here, so I would think it would have taken a little bit of research to get that. But yeah, the book itself is worth the price of admission too.
Were did they ever justify why all the I Am the Walrus covers?
No, oh, but I will say one thing. Let's. I know it's at the end. Oh, it's at the end of disc two. It's by LOL Coxhill, and it's some person, and I think it's their children that are. I don't know if I want to use the word singing, but it's like kids sitting on the cornflake, waiting for the band to come. It's like I don't know why this has happened, and but in a weird way, I feel it's almost faithful to the song in that it's so breaking like expectations that I almost was glad that it was on. Would I want to hear it much? I don't think so, but well, once
That's
again,
great.
it's like a song becomes like molasses or like toffee, and you just pull the song in different ways. And I will say, with the different "I Am the Walruses," that was happening.
Are there any, you want to pick one or two highlights that I can put on the playlist for YouTube? Any standouts?
Yeah, but let me see if I can find. I forget the name of the group, so it's going to take me just a second here to be able to do this. Um, there's a medley that I really liked. Um, oh, here it is. It's the Orange Bicycle, and it's a medley of "Carry That Weight" and "You Never Give Me Your Money." Now, obviously, those are tracks from Abbey Road. Uh, but I don't know. I somehow saw the pairing of those two. On Abbey Road, "Money" is on one side and "Carry That Weight" is near the end of the other side. So it doesn't seem like a natural kind of pairing. But I thought this, Orange Bicycle, I liked it.
Cool.
There's another Abbey Road cover I liked, but sometimes I like these covers just because I like the song anyways,
Hmm.
and I can't tell if it's like, oh, is that doing something more interesting? But the group is called the Good Ship Lollipop. How could there not be a group called that in the late '60s? And they do a version of Maxwell Silver Hammer. The, and I know, and I think John Lennon hated that song. I don't know why. I love that song, but um, it's I wouldn't say it's a bubblegum version, but it almost bang bang Maxwell. So and it's like, oh well, let's just get real happy here. But for some reason, for me, that really worked. Now there was a version of "I Am the Walrus" by a group called Affinity. That didn't do so much for me. And a group called Camel. I don't know if they were famous or not.
I've heard of Camel. I don't
Well,
know
they
their
did a
work.
version of Magical Mystery Tour. I mean, the song, not the whole album, but just the song. And it was all heavy. And all the charm that we know from the Magical Mystery Tour album just was drained right out of it. Now, I could see if you like a heavier sound, you might like that. I'm not trying to put it down. It's just for my taste, that one, I will definitely stick with the Beatles.
Cheap Trick did a cover of Mystery Tour, and
Gave it to me. Yeah,
did I I wonder how
yeah,
that compares to the Camel because Cheap Trick tends to play heavy too, but more of a power pop.
yeah, yeah.
And I like Cheap Trick's cover, but now I'm curious to hear the Camel version. I'll have to see if I can find it. Well, I'll see if I can find these tracks on YouTube, and we'll add a few of them if I can locate them.
There was one, I'm thinking it might be by a group called Atlantic Bridge that was like a 7-minute version of Dear Prudence.
Hmm.
Well, let's just say it sent me running back to the White Album for the shorter version.
Wasn't there a hit of someone covering Dear Prudence
The
in
Five
the
Stair
70s?
Steps.
Was that early 70s, mid
Yeah,
70s?
yeah.
Yeah, I think I have that on
Oh, I love it.
A Ronco
Yeah, but
compilation or
it's no
something.
7 minutes, and it's kind of a light soul harmony version with some
Mhm.
nice horns in it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that cover worked really well for me.
yeah. Well, cool. You've got me interested in this compilation.
It's on
I'll,
the Grapefruit label, by the way. If you,
what is the Grapefruit label? I've never heard of them. Are they do a
I
lot of
think
comps?
they do kind of a re-release and uh, mining the vaults of music from the old days.
Interesting.
Grapefruit was the name of a band too, so and it was a band that John Lennon really liked. At least he said in an interview.
Cool. Well, I this was one of my biggest purchases recently, and I've been looking forward to it all summer. When I first heard it mentioned as a upcoming release, I guess in the late spring, Richard and Linda Thompson Hard Luck Stories, 1972 to 1982. It's a box set, and it was produced by, I believe his name's Andrew Barrett. He's the same guy who produced the Bobby Gentry box set, Girl from Chickasaw County, which Ken, I know you have that. And he did a wonderful job on that box set. And so this is all of Richard and Linda Thompson's studio albums. I believe there's 6 studio albums remastered on CD. Some of those albums have been out of print for a while on CD. We actually have all their studio albums, the original pressings, but I was looking forward to getting the remasters. And then there's 2 more discs. So there's lots of stuff I've never heard before, very early material, uh, outtakes, um, live stuff, and it's just a very full picture of their whole career together, and it's really a great package. And it's the same format as the Bobby Gentry, so the same size, the same it looks very similar that way, and it's great, all good, but there was a problem. When I was waiting, I did a pre-order at importcds.com. I'm sure you've bought things
Oh
from them
yes, I
before.
know them well.
Yeah. So they had just an incredible price. It was 30% off the retail price for pre-order. And I think this came out in September 11th or 12th. And as I was waiting for it to start to ship, people on the Steve Hoffman forums. The Steve Hoffman forums is this website I go to a lot with. It's just people who are interested in audio and music, and they chat. And uh, people started saying, there's flaws in my CDs. I think a lot of the people in the UK got the CDs first, and they were saying something's wrong here. The I'm not able to rip the CDs. uh, Tracks are skipping on my CD player, and then it was really varied though. It's like some people's players they played through fine, and other people not. So I was worried, and when it finally came, we spent about 4 nights listening to the whole box set, usually 1 to 2, about 2 CDs per night, and Stacy and I listened to it, and I was pretty lucky because all but one of the CDs played all the way through. I think it was CD4, the last track, it choked on this very long track. But in the meantime, the Universal Music acknowledged that there was a problem. So they implemented a program where if you emailed them and you sent your sales receipt, they would send you replacement CDs. And also you could download the whole box set. So I've downloaded the whole thing. I have all the digital files. And just a week or 2 ago, I put my address in for them to mail them to me. So I'm waiting for the replacement CDs to come. So there was a little bit of a glitch there, but on the whole, it's a great box set. I'm glad I got it.
Are they the parents of Teddy?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I have a friend who's really into Teddy's music.
Teddy, I have a few of his albums. I do. And he did this great song with his father, Richard, called Persuasion, which I believe Richard Thompson co-wrote with Neil Finn from Crowded House, and it is just such a wonderful song. I love that single. Um, yeah, so Teddy's still doing his thing, but I know Ken, you're not really totally well acquainted with the career of Richard Lyndon Thompson, but they they're British folk icons, really, but very much a cult following. They never reached any kind of chart success to speak of at all, and it's shocking to me that they were not more successful.
Would you use the word cult?
Cult, yeah, I would, yeah.
That has negative associations, though. I don't, in a way, I don't like that word, but meaning more in the sense of a small but fierce adherents, people who really are, whether they were popular or not, doesn't matter. It's like we're really into the music, and that's pretty much that.
Yeah, yeah, and they had an interesting uh, career together. They there were in a period in the mid '70s. They joined a Sufi community in London, I think. It was sort of the mystical branch of Islam, and they lived in a virtual commune for a few years, I think, and really went away from music for a while. But this box set includes some of the music that they did record during that period when they were between albums doing their Sufi thing. And then they sort of crept back into the limelight a little bit. So you really get a full sweep of their career, and it's I'm glad I got it. I thought it was a good value, and even though we already had the albums, we got all this extra stuff. So that's why you get box sets, right?
Well, what do you think? You can talk about Stacy here as well, because I know she enjoys this music as well. You've been with them a long time. What is it that draws you to them?
Well, the songwriting. Richard Thompson's an excellent songwriter. He was in Fairport Convention in their early years. He's one of the greatest guitar players on the planet, and he's versatile too. So he does the folk style acoustic really well, but he's an incredible electric guitar player. So he can do the whole Jerry Garcia, Jimi Hendrix kind of almost psychedelic long solos too. And he's steeped in old fashioned rock and roll too. So he's got this sort of blend of the folk instincts and also the pop rock thing going. And then Linda Thompson, for my money, she's the greatest British folk vocalist. Just her timbre and just her voice sends chills down my spine. It's really amazing. I put her up with Sandy Denny, who you may know, and there's a more recent British folk artist, Kate Rusby, I really like. All three of them have just amazing vocals, and so it's just a total package. They're just great. They're great, but not much in the way of chart success.
I never count that as the most important thing, anyways.
Right. Well, you're the
For me, it's
champion of
always
the
what's in
flop.
the grooves. What is in the grooves? Whether it got popular or not, that's secondary.
Yeah, yeah, they were sort of like underdogs. Now Richard Thompson's had a very successful career since he went solo. They split up. They divorced, and he's been more successful as a solo artist than as a duo with her. And she suffers from dysphonia, so she has this problem where she loses her voice, which made it so hard for her to perform. And she has put out a few solo albums, all of which are good, but her career really got choked off literally because she can't sing. Um, and she wrote a song that I think Dolly Parton and what was it, the trio, Dolly and Emmylou
trio.
and Linda Ronstadt. I think they covered one of Linda Thompson's songs, and it I think it won a Grammy uh, back in the 80s or 90s. Uh, so she's had some success in her later career too.
Well,
So that was the big purchase recently. Was this
if
one?
it's the same guy that did the Bobby Gentry set, it's a shame that there were the glitches with the sound, but or with the CD artifacts themselves. But you know that it was well researched, well thought through, and done in a really interesting and immaculate kind of way.
The booklet is great. It's got beautiful photography and good liner notes. Yeah. So let's move on. Ken, what do you have next from your list
Oh,
of?
surprise me.
Oh, how about Stephen Eady? Real
How
True
about
Lovin'.
Stephen Eady?
Yeah.
Let me see. Oh, there's my. Well, I'm doing two because here's the Stephen Eady doing Bonfa and Brazil. That's Luis Bonfa, who was one of the uh, really important people for bringing over the samba and bossa nova sound in the 50s and 60s, which became kind of very well known here in the United States in the 60s in particular here as well. But I've kind of fallen madly in love with them and their harmonies. And so I've been picking up things as I see them. Not everything that I know of is on CD yet, or some came out on CD. And if you didn't grab it in the first 6 months, now it's expensive and it's not so easy to get. The one that you've got on the screen now, I actually got through the Steve Lawrence Foundation. And on that foundation, they actually sell 45s and they sell CDs, mint copies, by the way, of the singles. That's wonderful for me to, because a lot of these singles weren't picked up on albums. So it's like, well, this is where you go, but to have a mint copy, I'll happily pay to get that. But the new one that I picked up is not the Bonfa, although I like that because they're working in that kind of Brazilian kind of way, but very buoyant and easy listening. But this album here called Real True Lovin', this is an album where Steve and Eady just kind of go back over the last couple of years and they sing their favorite kind of songs that were on the charts. So you'll get songs like Call Me, Happy Together, things that are can't take my eyes off you, almost standards of the day. But you know, with their harmonies, they kind of bring their own kind of feel to it. So I don't feel like it's just like strictly a rehash. It feels like, oh, this is how they're approaching some interesting, fun songs from back in that time. The Real True Lovin' album that came out on RCA in I think early 1969. And I'm not sure that it's even come out ever on CD, which is a shame. Fortunately, my album copy is in really good shape. However, this is a story your listeners might find interesting. Um, I was I put the album briefly down on the floor of this very office, and I went into the kitchen to go get something to eat. And I came back into that, and my cat Bailey puked all over the album. And it wasn't like he
Not a Stephen Eady fan, huh?
well, that's a really bad review. And it was still in its beautiful cover, you know, which that was a mercy in a way. The album didn't get puked on. It was only the cover. And I got there so quickly that I was able to clean it up and all that. So you maybe wouldn't even know that that happened. But it's like, gosh darn it, I just got this in the house. And, you know, now already something is happening.
You know
That's the
how
life of a record collector.
you know how cats are when anything new comes in the house, they're on top of it. At least our cat is that way. Hawk, they any new package or something comes in, they are just they scout it out. So maybe that's what Bailey was doing.
Well, I don't really know what he was doing, but I wish he
He was
hadn't done
puking. That's what he was.
it. And it's like, you you know, you just don't puke on Stephen Eady.
No, no. I have so many Stephen Eady on vinyl, but I don't have this album. I don't normally come across it in the used bins either, but I'll keep an eye out for
Yeah,
it.
I maybe it was a total flop. I really don't know. Oh, let me one more story about it though. How I got into it and how I even learned about it. Uh, I picked up through eBay some easy listening albums. They were easy listening sets, and one of those easy listening sets had 6 of the songs from Real True Lovin' on it. So it wasn't through the Stephen Eady album that I actually heard the songs first. First, I heard 6 of those songs through this easy listening set. And one thing about the easy listening set, boy, they had really, maybe nobody ever played it because the copies I was able to burn the songs from them. It was like burning from a CD. It was very clear. That's how I first met the songs, or half the songs off the CD, or off the album.
I'm checking out their Discog page for this album, and I don't think it is on CD. I'm only seeing 3 LP releases.
Which is inexplicable. I mean, I don't know why that would be. Now, I'm not sure. I would have to go back to that Steve Lawrence Foundation. It is possible. Maybe it was brought out and I just never knew about it or whatever, you know.
I am starting to see some Stephen Eady come out in, I think they're in twofers on CD.
Yeah,
And
I've got some. I've been really on the ball trying to collect it.
so you might see this one come out on CD soon.
I would be happy if that would be the case.
Well, since Stephen Eady are kind of in that swing style, right? I thought it might be good to segue to Lena Horne.
Ooh.
And this is an album that I have on vinyl, and it's a mono pressing. And we recently listened to it again, and there's something about this album where it's just a phenomenal pressing. So the her vocals are just front and center, and her mic is so hot. It's like everything's like woo, like in your face, and there's lots of depth to the sound. Like the band sounds great. It's just a wonderful sounding record. If you can find this one on mono and in a good clean copy, it's worth it. I'm sure it's out on CD too. Let me see if there are. Yeah, there is. Yeah, even the mono CD is on RCA. There's a Japanese pressing of it out, but this has a lot of her classics. I guess "Stormy Weather" was a big song for her, and that particular song. But this is just a great album. The other album by her that I got turned on to, and let me add this to our. This just came yesterday, and it's from the late '60s. It's called "Watch What Happens," and it originally was released on Sky Records as Lena and Gabor. So Lena Horne and Gabor Szabo, who is a Hungarian jazz guitarist. And this album, uh, how did I find out about it? I was browsing the Steve Hoffman forums, and they have a thread in there on eBay sales. And Steve Hoffman is this mastering engineer, and he runs the forum, but he's kind of uh, he has a reputation for being a good mastering engineer. So the albums that he's mastered have become collectible, and this is one of those albums. So it came up as an eBay listing at a cheap price, so I ended up buying it, and it just came yesterday. And I listened to it on Spotify while I was waiting for the CD to arrive, and I just fell in love with the album. It's got she does 4 or 5 Beatles covers on this album, and she does "Something," the George Harrison, "Fool on the Hill," "Rocky Raccoon," and "In My Life." And then she also does "Everybody's Talking," and Yesterday When I Was Young, Watch What Happens is a Michel Legrand song. I think that was a minor hit off of this album. And what else is on here? A Message to Michael, the Backrack David song, and a couple others. But it's a kind of a cool album because there's a lot of weird organ, sort of loungy sort of organ in the background, and the drums and bass, and then this jazzy guitar guy. And she's in really good voice. Her voice sounds very mature and bluesy, and you've got to hear her version of Rocky Raccoon. Uh, I don't know if that made it onto your Beatles comp or not, but it
Oh, I
should
think
have.
it did. I think there is one version of that. And there were a couple versions, by the way, of Bungalow Bill. That's not a song I normally think of as being covered all that much, but evidently it was.
Yeah, so this was a good find. I knew nothing about this album before, and it's kind of fun to make those new discoveries. And when you follow the breadcrumbs on the web, sometimes it leads you places that you never would have gone to before. You mentioned too that had found a Lena Horne song or an album recently.
Well, a song on that easy listening, set. They had Lena Horne doing the classic. I love the song. I only have eyes for you,
Mm,
and she does a very nice version. I don't know if that's on the album, not the Watch What Happens, but I don't know from what album that was taken. But
yeah.
a perfectly nice version. It's one of those songs that I doubt I would hate it by anybody. It's like the song "The Shadow of Your Smile."
Hmm.
My garbage man could do it, and I would like it. It's just one of those songs, and she does a very nice version of that. I only have eyes.
I like when some of these older jazz and pop vocalists did albums in the late 60s, early 70s, and they're trying to cover more contemporary material. I find that those are often interesting takes on those songs. And this album, by the way, I think the original label Sky Records folded, and then Buddha picked it up and reissued it. So it kept strange. It was a strange bedfellow between Lena Horne and all the bubblegum stuff on the Buddha label.
Buddha was I know we associate that label with the bubblegum because there certainly was a lot of it, but actually that label was a little more wider than one might think. And I'm trying to remember, and I'm thinking I have one of the Buddha singles that Lena did.
It might be
I have
this
to
one.
go.
It might be Watch What Happens.
I know, and that whole thing with Gabor, I thought, why did I know this? I must have known it from that single.
Yeah, that's definitely a cool album. I'm really happy to have discovered it. So, do you want to talk about Claudine Lange, Ken?
Doesn't everybody? Uh, Let me just say how I got into Claudine Longet. Everyone finds their way into different people at different times, I suppose. And I'm unapologetic. Yes, I know the scandalizing story about the love affair in the 70s and all of that, la la la.
You left out the murder of the
the
guy.
the the ski guy that she was having, an affair with. She supposedly shot him, quote, accidentally. It's always been a debate how accidental it was, or is it possible it can be accidental and not accidental at the same time? That who knows. Andy Williams said she was accident prone. Well, then don't let her near a gun. Whatever happened happened. I think she ended up marrying her defense lawyer.
She did.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. But that's what and I'm doing it right now. That situation always overshadows any kind of talk or thinking about the music. And let's get that crap out of the way, and then just think about, well, what's in the music. And I think a lot of people will dismiss her, as just being uh, kind of a sexy, breathy Frenchy chanteuse, and that nothing more than that. But I go back to all of her albums, from the first to the last. I so she's kind of a staple with me. How I got into Claudine was at a record fair. Someone had a little box of 45s, and this person was selling them a quarter a piece. Always a good possibility for me. And you always have to, when they're that cheap, I always have to look very carefully. Like, is it cracked? Is it scratched? Is it going to sound like an aircraft carrier landed on it? But this was pretty good. And it was a single she had out in early 60, well, maybe not early, in 1967 called Hello, Hello. And that had been a kind of a hit for the Sop with Camel early in 67. But I thought, oh, I like Hello, Hello. And, I thought I'll give it a shot and see what it is. Well, I flipped. When I got it home and I played it, I thought, this is wonderful. I love that this is so airy and flouncy, and her voice just kind of fits it like, perfectly. And that started the long-term love affair with the music of Claudine Longet.
Awesome. And then we're looking at the track list here. Lots of great stuff. I love her cover of the Randy Newman song "Snow."
Oh,
Beautiful.
it is wonderful. Yes, I know. And now we're getting into winter. That song, when it does snow out, if you play it, it's just ideal.
She also does Everybody's Talking. And yeah, again, this is one of my favorite periods of songwriting is late 60s, early 70s.
Oh, me
So,
too.
anyone who does I Think It's Gonna Rain Today, I'm on board with it, or Both Sides Now, or uh, the Beatles covers, Good Day Sunshine, Here, There, and Everywhere. I have a lot of her albums now on vinyl, and I have few of them on CD too, and I enjoy them all. I have you to thank for introducing me to her, because I was in that camp of just being pretty dismissive of her, and she's an acquired taste, I think, for many people, but once you get it, it's very rewarding.
Well, I think, her approach, because maybe she's French, and you listen to, like, it sounds like the accent is, it's not put on because she's French. It's legitimate. But maybe to some listeners it sounds kind of cutesy or something. And she's got a breathier kind of delivery, which sounds sex kitteny, and which it is, but if it works, it works. And it does for me, on the back, you had the tracks on the other side of that. The last track on this album is one of my all-time favorite Christmas songs, called I don't intend to spend Christmas without you. uh, a little bit more of a beat than in some of her other songs. That one's great fun. I always play that at Christmas time,
I wonder
or
if that
and other times during the year.
I wonder if that ever showed up on a Christmas compilation somewhere.
Well, if it didn't, it should have. And by the way, the flip of it was snow.
Okay, great. Cool. Speaking of female vocalists, I might as well share a couple more. This came out over the summer. It was one of the albums that was delayed because of the pandemic. So many releases were pushed back, and it was scheduled for spring, and then it didn't come out, I think, till August. Rumer, one of my favorite contemporary female vocalists, Natural Tears. So every song on this album is written by a guy named Hugh Prestwood, who it's a country pop album. And I knew nothing about Hugh Prestwood, but I'm very impressed with his songwriting. These are very professionally written songs, and Rumer pulls off going country here, and it's just really a special album. She hasn't really released a bad album for my money. I was a little bit suspect, thinking, well, how is she going to make this transition from more traditional pop and the sort of Bacharach David style stuff that she often does to more of a country pop setting, but it works super well. It's a great album. She lives in Georgia now, so she thinks she's been probably soak. I think she's in Macon, and she's been absorbing some of those influences, I think, which is maybe why this album came out.
Well, you know, when I'm looking at the cover here, and you mentioned the writer who wrote the songs that she does on this, I'm sent back to remembering albums by Ella Fitzgerald, for example, or Peggy Lee, doing albums where they would take one particular composer and they'd call him a songbook,
Mhm.
and you know you'd have that artist but covering only a particular songwriter or songwriting duo or whatever, you know, like Ella does Cole Porter, that kind of thing. And now
Right.
she here now in, you know, our own time, we have Rumer, the songs of Hugh Prestwood, and I will admit I've never heard of him before. So the album is kind of an education as well. It's not just her, but if you don't know the writer, you're going to learn something about someone else who's got a voice in contemporary music as well.
The the thing is, I wonder if you've heard songs by him, 'cause you are more of a country fan than I am, and you
No,
may
I've
well
always,
have heard some of his songs, but not known who wrote the song.
you never know. I'd have to kind of see what the titles are and, you know, all of that. But she must really respect him or be connected with him in some way to want to do an entire album of his material. She must really think a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah. This is another one that I'll just spend a couple a minute on. Miranda Lee Richards is, an artist I've taken an interest in. I bought an album by her called Existential Beast, and I was kind of I first got exposed to it on Spotify when I was back in the days when I was running, and I would listen in my earbuds while I was running around the track. It came on, and this song caught my attention because it was sort of pop psychedelic style, and she's very much coming out of the LA scene, so she sort of has that a little bit of that Laurel Canyon vibe going for her, and, I didn't know anything about her career, so I went and picked that album up, and now I've been scouting and looking for her CDs on the cheap. So this CD came out in 2001, and you can find her stuff on eBay, usually pretty affordable if you're patient. So I think this was one of her earlier albums, maybe her first one, called The Here Thereafter, and, I like it a lot. She's, it's one of these people who probably deserves more success than she's gotten, and she's put out several albums by now. So I'm kind of in my collecting world, I'm trying to build up my CD collection of her now.
Is it just me? The picture of her looks very young.
She does look young there, but I think she's close to my age. She's maybe a few years younger. This 2001, she would have been in her 20s or 30s, I think. How old is she? I'll look it up, see if I can find it. Born in 75, so she's about 11 years younger than me. So she
Well,
would be in
then
her
this
mid
album
40s
that
now.
you have on the screen, she would have been 26.
Yeah, so it was one of her first albums, if not the first. But Ken, you might like her because there's this sort of trippy side to her that, but it doesn't stray too far away from pop.
Has she had any hits at all? The
I
name
don't think
sounds
so.
familiar.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Um, I'm going to switch to one of your selections here. Did I get the album cover right?
Oh yes.
Okay. Peggy Lee.
Oh, I'm an enormous fan of Peggy Lee. And this album came out in 1975. It's called, if you look at the cover, you can tell what it's called. It's called Mirrors. Uh, what that picture does not do justice to the actual vinyl album. The vinyl album looks like it's silver, almost like a silver mirror, which thus the title mirrors. So when you see it like this on the CD, it to me it does not represent what it was to have the Mirrors album. Not that that matters. Again, all that matters to me is what's in the grooves. But
Is this what it looked like more?
yeah, well, it is. But again, that's you would have to actually see the artifact. That flattens it out so that you don't really get that same feeling. It's like there's a Bee Gees album from 1969 called Odessa, and that was done in kind of red velvet. And if you take a picture like that, that red velvet just is going to make it look like it's a red album. And it's like you lose the texture, and that was whole part of the experience was what they did with that.
Yeah. So what do you
But
like about this album?
only everything, and it's got one of my top 10 songs of all time on it, called "Longings for a Simpler Time."
Hmm.
That's after our the show is over, Jim. Write yourself a note to go and play that particular song. I won't spoil it for you because I don't, I hate when people do that, but you'd think it's going to be this little sentimental song until you get to the end of it. And it's like, whoa, that certainly sent the song in a new direction. But I like every
I'll
second.
add it to the playlist. I'm sure I'll be able to find it on YouTube.
Oh, I would think so. And I read a book about her, and there was great hope that this album was going to kind of bring her back to the charts. And you can see that, she's doing the songs of Lieber and Stoller. Well, Lieber and Stoller wrote her big hit in 1969 called Is That All There Is, a song I'm absolutely crazy about. And so this was kind of a hope to restore that, and it didn't happen. In fact, when she was doing some of the songs from this live, she was always, on the road and touring and doing that kind of thing. They didn't always go over very well. And if you would listen to them, they're narrative songs. They're not, the kind of thing one normally associates with Peggy Lee. I hate when artists get to be kind of like, oh, she's supposed to do that. Well, who said? And you try something different, and sometimes your normal audience kind of says, well, no, I won't go that way. This happened with the Carpenters, with their song Goodbye to Love in 1972, which has a much more in your face guitar on it, which I absolutely love on that song. And they got hate letters like, don't mess with the formula. It was good the way you were doing it. And now you're bringing in this loud guitar. Stop being a rock group and all of this. Uh, which, you know, it, I find that to be really insulting. I mean, who are you to say that, and an artist should just be in your little box? I don't think so. But anyways,
It's like when Dylan went electric and his folk fans got irate
but
about it.
everybody must get stoned.
I remember the first Dylan concert I went to was at the Spectrum, and Dylan was touring with Tom Petty, and we were sitting, pretty far back in the Spectrum, and there was this older couple they were clearly from the acoustic folk era, and they just sat through the whole concert with their arms folded, so totally pissed off
Well, then
that
why did they even
why
come?
did you even go? What did you think he's going to turn back into Pete Seeger or something? I mean, it's just lighten up a little bit.
Well,
Lighten up.
oh well, he got the last laugh. He's got the Nobel Prize,
That's right.
and they don't.
Yeah.
But anyways, the Peggy Lee Mirrors is my favorite Peggy Lee album, and I've got a boatload of them. You mentioned just one last comment. You mentioned before about when you were talking about Lena Horne enjoying these artists who would kind of do contemporary songs that maybe wouldn't be associated with their earlier selves or earlier period, but they bring their own spin to them, and she's another one that did that.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
it's like, well, I'm really glad that she did those kind of covers of songs that you might not normally associate with her, but she brought her own spin to them.
Speaking of this album, this is a great segue. I'm glad you picked this album because this is an album I recently got on CD that I didn't have on CD before. Procol Harum, Procol's Ninth, comes from 19, I want to say 75, right? This was produced by Lieber and Stoller.
Oh my.
So they were, it's this reissue of which has two extra discs of live sets. And it came out on the what's the label? Esoteric Recordings, which is a UK label. And this was the only album by Procol Harum that Lieber and Stoller produced, but apparently Lieber and Stoller had some success, I think, with Jerry Rafferty, maybe. Uh, so they were in demand, and maybe that's why Peggy Lee went with them. I don't know if Lieber and Stoller produced Mirrors or not, but she did their songs, right?
Oh yeah, I think they were involved in. I'm not. I'm gonna misremember, but I'm thinking the recording was not fun. That she
Uh,
was in disagreement about some things with them or
yeah,
something. But again, what all I care about. I don't care how you had to suffer to make it. I'm glad that what's in the grooves.
right.
That's what I care about as a listener.
So I'm a huge Procol Harum fan, and I have all their albums on vinyl and all almost all their albums on CD except for this one. I don't know why this one fell through the cracks, but I finally got around to buying it on CD when this remaster reissue came out, and it sounds great. And it's a Procol by this point was on the downside of their career. There would be one album after this one called Something's Magic, and then they basically were toast for about 10 years, and then they reformed and put out another couple albums. But this this is one of those albums that I never listened to enough back in the day, and I should have listened to it more because it's got a lot of great material, and their band still sounds great. And they do a Lieber and Stoller cover on this called "I Keep Forgetting," and they also do a Beatles cover, 8 Days a Week, which it's sort of odd to hear them covering other artists, but the songwriting's still strong and it sounds great, and the extra live sets are interesting to listen to. So I'm just really happy I was able to pick it up and in a way rediscover this album. That's partly why I like to sort of double up on things I have on LP. If I can find them a good price or something on CD, I'll pick it up, and then it gives me an opportunity to revisit it in a new format. And
Yeah, sometimes it's like, uh, especially if you haven't listened to it in a long time,
yeah,
in the new format, it comes back to you almost fresh. And that's kind of fun because there's a kind of chance for real rediscovery, like you're hearing it with really fresh ears.
speaking of rediscovery, is this an album that you're
Ah,
rediscovering? And
well,
why
no.
why did this make the list?
Well, it's only because I rediscover it every day. And I have since I was 13. This is I don't know, at least of his early period, definitely my favorite album by Tommy James and the Shondells. Uh, and as an album, it didn't do very well. They were considered such a singles band that that's where the emphasis, I think, that Roulette, their label, was kind of more on that. But I this album for me really works very well. It's kind of autumn of 1967 when it came out. One of the very first albums I bought. And for me to buy an album, that I didn't have money, so to save up enough from my allowance to be able to get an album was it's like someone buying a car. you know?
Mhm.
Well, I was, when you're 13, whatever, so I was very pleased to get this album, and it's been a friend of mine to this day. You know, so much stuff I really enjoy on it.
They I'm checking to see if this is on my original album series box of Tommy James and the Shondells, and I don't think it is. So y- this the original album series has, I'll show you,
with the
try to show you
five
a picture of it.
albums. There's an Otis Redding that has two CDs of five each. There's an Aretha Franklin. Yeah,
So,
I know that set.
but this album you just mentioned isn't on that.
No, it is not. There is though an album of the Getting Together album with the Moni Moni album, and that's what my copy is
Oh, okay.
those two albums together, which does fit because Moni was mid '68 and Getting Together was late '67.
Yeah, so that this might be one I have to look for to. Is there anything else missing in that in those early years of Tommy James and the Shondells?
Uh, well, I can complain uh, a little bit because something that drives me wild. I hate when well, and I guess it would be roulette. I don't know if Tommy was involved in doing this or not, but a couple of his biggest hits. One was called Mirage. That was a top 10 record in May and June of 1967. And then in late 69, he had another top 20 record called Ball of Fire, one of my absolute favorites by Tommy James. On the greatest hits sets, they change the ending on both of those songs, and it drives me nuts because they weaken it. Ball of Fire ends with kind of an a cappella where the group is singing and there's a little drum beat behind it, but there's nothing else, and it makes the record. I love it that way. And on the Greatest Hits album that came out at the tail end of 1969, you take away the a cappella and you've got it just kind of sliding out into music, just like a kind of a softer fade. And I thought, this isn't the song. This is all messed up. And I
Mm.
will not listen to it that way. It's like I have to have the actual. Now, since then on CD, the real versions, well, I call them the real versions, have come out. Mirage has at the very ending on the 45 version, which is for me the real version, the group comes in and kind of has a harmonic counterplay with Tommy being the lead vocalist. They changed that on the greatest hits, and I why would you do that?
Yeah.
So it's got to be for me what I consider to be the superior right version and original version, I might add.
You're the expert on Tommy James. I mean, the walking encyclopedia. So if anybody has questions about Tommy James and the Shondells, forward them to me. I'll pass them on to Ken. We'll get you answers. It's good knowledge.
Believe it or not, I think that I do know a few people even more aware than I am.
Has he ever had a box set come out? A true box set?
No, no, I'm furious about it.
You think he would? He deserves one.
Well, couldn't somebody put it out? Well, he or him on his own label. Why? Just don't make billions of copies of it.
Right.
But yeah, I wish there'd be something with rarities. The second single, this is before he had any popularity at all, has never come out on any form of CD that I know of. Wouldn't that be perfect for a box set? Pick up all that stuff, and whatever is still in the can, unless it got burned in that fire in New York, who knows? But I really wish somebody would be able to do a really good box set.
With all the 45 mixes and everything. You could do well,
Yeah.
this is what you should do. You would be the perfect person.
Well,
This is your post-retirement job
I
now.
would rather be the consultant. If it has to do
You could
anything.
write the booklet,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I did. Remember, I did write the liner notes to that solo anthology that he had out.
I
But
have to get that.
well, yeah, but let's say I wrote it, but by the time it was rewritten, I was rewritten out of it. I don't know why. I mean, and that's where I got to interview him on the phone. Oh, that was a great moment. That was great fun. But maybe the liner note people didn't like my approach to what I wrote or whatever, I still got paid for it.
That's
But
good.
when I read it, I thought, I don't know who wrote this, but this doesn't sound like me at all.
Well, you had mentioned the Bee Gees a few minutes ago, and this is an album I've just been
Oh
listening
my.
to.
Yes, I'm an old friend of that album.
So I don't know what to think about this album. I've been trying to finish off the catalog of my records and CDs on Discogs. So I've been working my way up through the alphabet backwards. So I'm up to the B's now, and so I pulled this album and cataloged it, and then some of my vinyl, I'm listening to things and I'm trying to figure out, do I really need to keep it or not? Should I maybe sell it or free cycle it, give it away, pass it on to someone? And I'm not sure where I stand on this album, Trafalgar. It, what's your opinion of it?
Well, I bought it back in the day. That would have been in late summer of 1971. And it's still in their, very much in their pre-disco period, heavy on the ballads. They did have a number one single that came with this album called "How Can You Mend a Broken Heart." So the album did get notice. Yeah, partly because that particular song was so big. It's a real mixed bag for me. There are some songs that kind of just lie there, but there are other songs, if you like the earlier Bee Gees, that are, for me, among my favorites. Like, you've got up there now that fourth track called "It's Just the Way." And
Mm.
look at the writer, M. Gibb. That's not that's not Barry Gibb. That's Maurice, who never gets enough credit in that group. Maurice often brings the kind of deeper voice for whatever, into some of the harmonies, but "It's Just the Way" is one of my. Somebody Stop the Music. I like that a lot. I like their M. Gibb, Trafalgar, the title track. I love the title track to that. Don't Want to Live Inside. I love that one. But then there's things.
Walking Back to Waterloo was a cool song, I thought. That
Yeah,
last
I
track.
like that too. But that's the way the album is, and it depends on what you're looking for with the Bee Gees. Now, the second track there, "Don't Want to Live Inside Myself." Look at that, 5 minutes and 22 seconds. That was the follow-up single to "How Can You Mend," and it only made like in the 50s nationwide because I think it was just, again, the fans were not expecting the Bee Gees to kind of go in that direction, and the lyrics are really introspective, and I love it. But
The whole album has this sort of a almost a downtrodden, slow feel to it. It's a lot of ballads, like you said, and uh, I wasn't sure what I thought about it. I'm not sure I'm going to keep it on vinyl. I know I'm sure it's out on Spotify if I want to listen to it, but when you're trying to downsize your collection, you have to make some tough decisions sometimes. Does it stay or should it go?
well, for me, just for the things I love on it, it would stay.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're
Sometimes
talking
there
me
are
into.
albums where they may be 11 tracks, and what if you only really, really like half of it? Well, if I really, really like half of it, that's the end of the discussion. I have to have it.
Right. Now, the album I don't have that I would next time I see it, I'll pick it up on vinyl is Odessa. That's a huge gaping hole in my Bee Gees collection. I bet
Oh,
I
I
would
love
like that.
Odessa.
I
Yeah, I
bet I
love
would
Odessa.
like it. It
And that's the one I was talking about, the felt cover
the
with the
velour.
name Bee
Yeah.
Gees in gold against the red felt. That I oh man, even back in the day, I thought this is the coolest cover ever.
Now I'll sneak this one in too. Uh, one of my all-time favorite singles is "Love Will Keep Us Together." We had the 45, and I was at the right age for it. But
I
I
think
went
that's a
through
Neil
this.
Sedaka song, by the way.
It is, yeah. And this album, I started sometimes when I sit. I often listen to albums in the early morning on the headphones, and then I'll kind of get on my phone and research the artists as I'm listening. So the Captain Tennille, what a bizarre marriage they had. She divorced him after something like 30 years of marriage, and then he died a few years later. But and I think she wrote a memoir where she talks about how their marriage was very loveless. like not intimate at all. And he was very controlling and sort of emotionally distant. You can kind of see this on the photography, can't you?
Why stay with them for 30 years?
Well, that's a great question. I guess we'll have to read the memoir, but which I won't, but I just read the Amazon reviews of it. But he almost looks kind of like he's on the Asperger's spectrum or something, and he just doesn't have the affect, you know. But I think the connection for them was musical, but apparently it didn't go much farther than that. And
You know, 30 years, I think you've more than earned your pass to say goodbye. If after 30 years it's still kind of empty, like,
well,
uh,
finally did dump
although
him.
didn't she, like, when he died, I thought she was like right there, that
She was.
I mean,
I
there
think they
must
were
have been
still
something
friends.
underneath all of whatever distance, something
Yeah.
legitimate and real.
Yeah, I mean, there was still a relationship there. They had friendship, but she was at his side when he passed away. But I wanted to just point out the Beach Boys songs that they do on this album. So they do Disney Girls. I think Cuddle Up is a Dennis
Yes.
Wilson song.
Did the Beach Boys ever really record Cuddle Up? I
It might
know
have
that,
just been a Dennis song.
I don't know. I am associating that title with the Beach Boys in one way or another.
Let me pull up the label here. So yeah, Cuddle Up was co-written by Dennis and Daryl Dragon. So the captain was in the Beach Boys touring band
Oh,
in the 70s. And so there's a lot of overlap with the Beach Boys here. But then they do I think a very good cover of God Only Knows on side 2. And there's just an amazing drum fill later in the song with it's Hal Blaine is all over this album.
oh,
He's the Wrecking Crew drummer.
right, right.
And I've come to be able to recognize his drumming style now. And you know, I always listen to the drums on these songs because I'm a drummer. But he has this amazing drum fill as the song was peaking, you know, about 2 minutes in. And but they do a very tasteful cover of it. So I know it's the Captain and Tennille, and I should get a life, but this one I'm going to keep.
Well, if you like it, you like
I
it.
like it. I like
I've
it.
never heard it, so I mean, I know Love Will Keep Us Together, but I have no connection with them other than just the songs I remember from the radio.
Now I've also
They
been
did have
work.
a TV show, I think, for a little bit.
They did, yeah. I think I might have watched it. This album is in our vinyl collection. I think Stacy had it, and I don't think I've ever listened to it. So again, I'm working my way up through the B's and my cataloging. So I'm like, oh, let me listen to this love songs compilation by the Beatles. Well, side 1 of this is on vinyl, pretty much unlistenable. The pressing was so bad. Yesterday, it's a 2-minute, 4-second song that lasted about 30 seconds with all the skipping,
Oh, get
and
rid of it.
it was just horrific. Uh, and it just sometimes vinyl can really let you down when things don't sound right.
Well,
But
was the record damaged in some way? How
not visibly, it doesn't look that bad. But I
that
think
could
it's
be deceptive.
a bad pressing or something. I don't know. But it's a nice collection of their love songs, and the second disc of the 2 LP set sounded better. So we'll keep it, but it's disappointing. It's one of the Capitol was in the habit of in the 70s reissuing all the Beatles stuff in these sort of 2 LP sets. I don't know if you ever had any of them.
Well, I had the red and the blue albums that were kind of hits anthologies, essentially.
And here's one that you said you got recently,
Yeah, there
Gordon.
was a big sale at Real Gone Music, and I couldn't resist a really big music sale. And I thought, oh, I'd forgotten that this ever had come out. But what I really wanted was It goes A side, B side, A side, B side in order from 1970 to 1980. So it gives, with the singles, you're going to have kind of ideal copies of those. And for me, Gordon is another example of someone that if there's surface noise, it's going to hurt, and CD really, for me, anyways, in general, has helped eliminate that particular problem. Uh, it, I mean, I have a lot of these on various Gordon albums, but it's nice to have them all drawn together as the singles, A side and B side, and then just kind of take a tour of his career during that crucial 10 years.
Are there differences between the 45 versions and the LP versions that you know of?
I would have to listen much more and listen more closely. Um, my favorite single by him, and I'm going to define it as like meaning I love both sides, not just one side a lot more than the other, uh, was from his album called Old Dan's Records, which may be my favorite Gordon. I mean, I don't know if it's my favorite. It's way up there, but it's called That Same Old Obsession. And the flip side also on this set is called You Are What I Am. And I love both sides of that. To me, that's just my kind of Gordon right there. So yeah, to have those together and just kind of as part of a cohesive whole of what he was doing in that 10-year period, definitely I was happy to pick it up. And again, because of Real Gone having that sale, I got it for, no pun, I got it for a song.
All right, well, we'll just do a couple more albums here. I wanted to get your opinion on this one, Kim Carnes,
Oh,
Mistaken
I bought
Identity.
it back in the day.
Huge album. Betty Davis Eyes, number one for weeks, right?
Oh yes, yeah, very very large. I still like it. Although when it was out, I was absolutely crazy about it. Not just because it's about Betty Davis, who I adore, but I was very big on the song, and so that's why I ended up buying this album.
And again, I hadn't listened to this in forever, so it was fun to revisit the album. And the whole album is decent. It's not just Betty Davis Eyes. There's a lot of good stuff on here and felt well produced. And it's then I started researching Kim Carnes and discovering that a lot of her stuff's out of print and fetching high prices for CD reissue, things. It would take some doing to collect her discography on CD, and I'm wondering if it's worth it to explore deeper into her catalog or not. This is what Spotify is great for because I can
Yeah.
sort of test listen to things, but I'm thinking, there's more here maybe than I gave her credit for, and she's had a long career and she had albums before this one. I think she started in the early 70s, and I know nothing about this material at all. Maybe there's some good stuff in there.
There's, I don't know if it's rumor, apocrypha, or truth, uh, which is kind of the world we seem to live in now, anyways. But that she was one of the vocalists in a group called the Sugar Bears. And the Sugar Bears were, the cereal Sugar Pops.
Oh yeah.
And the group that was kind of behind, I mean, it was a promotional thing for the cereal were the Sugar Bears. And the Sugar Bears actually did have one charting record. And they had an album, and I have the album. I have and the album cover of the Sugar Bears is like a cartoon, so it even looks like something you'd give to a 5-year-old or something. But
I want.
rumor has it that Kim Carnes was female vocalist in the Sugar Bears.
I wonder if she's always had that raspy voice like you hear on this album. It-
It's kind of sexy, you
I
know,
think so. Yeah.
and I think some of those songs, if it was just a kind of softer, quieter, without that edge, I think you wouldn't even notice the songs. But I think her voice does add some sort of texture to those songs. Like Hit and Run would be a perfect example.
Notice that Jackie DeShannon
Oh
has
yes.
some songwriting credits on here. This album made her a lot of money. I mean,
Much
just
more
for
than
Betty
her own
Davis.
albums were were making at the time, which is a pity because I am a huge Jackie DeShannon fan.
Yeah, she's really good. Okay. That might do it. I'm trying to see if there's anything else on your list that we didn't cover. Oh, there is this Lazy Day.
Oh yeah, we could
Let me
talk
pull
about that
that
for
up.
just 1 minute.
Yeah, we'll pull it up.
There it is. Yeah, this was, and I love that Teensville Records, by the way, that label. Tony Powers and George Fishoff wrote a bunch of songs in the late 60s that got popular by folks like Spanky and Our Gang and Keith. They did get some notice, but they wrote a lot more than was just, the songs that ended up making the Hot 100. And I thought, well, I like that stuff. Would I like a whole album of their material? And the answer turned out to be yes.
Hmm.
This is a very kind of generous kind of serving of their material. I didn't quite realize they had this many songs on it. But sometimes you take, yeah, I mean, look at that. What is that? 30 tracks that are on this. Um, Sometimes you take a chance, like, well, I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, but there's reason to think I might like some of it, and I was very glad to have picked this up. And it also, just in terms of songwriters, we always think of the artist, but let's go behind the curtain every now and then and see the writer who made the song possible even to begin with. And so I thought this is a good way to make me find out about these two folks that wrote in a very important period for my own music, so I was glad to have picked it up.
Some interesting artist names here, like Tinker Bell's Fairy Dust.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, they were British.
The Beat Stalkers.
Oh, yeah. These were people that did not, ever make the Hot 100 there. But if you look at the bottom, there's Betty Everett. I mean, she had some hits. Even the McGuire sisters. I mean, good
What
heavens.
is it? Is the style consistent across all these versions? Well, how would you characterize the genre of the music?
Uh, well, when you see the date 65 to 68, yes, it feels like it's a good fit for those years.
Okay.
And I don't mean that negatively, or that's just kind of an observation,
Yeah. Well, it's great. Cool.
but not expected. I don't know why I ended up getting that. I just thought I'll just bet. And indeed there was.
Well, that was fun just to chat about music like that.
Oh yes, that's one thing about this pandemic that is sad. You and I used to be able to get together and talk about music and go to Panera's and and now I'm retired.
Or the English suite, we would have lots of conversations in
Always,
the suite.
yeah, and now with, not that I'm sad to be retired, but I mean, uh, that part of life isn't as common as it had been. Hopefully this stupid pandemic, maybe by next year, we'll be able to hopefully get back more of our real lives again.
We hope so. But in the meantime, let's, keep checking in with one another. And we'd love to have you back on the podcast
Always,
to
it's
talk
always
more
fun
about
for me.
records.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to just check in and see, hey, what have you been listening to lately? What have you been collecting? And there's always a story around it, right?
Oh yes, as there is for just about every song I listen to.
Cool. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. We'll stop recording here, and hopefully this worked, and hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we'll do it again soon.